No.
You haven't seen Star Wars?
I've seen snippets of Star Wars. So
It's
a perfect
completely lost
illustration
on her. See, this is our problem,
as
right? If you haven't seen
I
Star
know.
Wars, you'll have no idea what our poetry is about. Wait.
As a perfect illustration of cultural disintegration. Every single time I've tried to sit down to watch Star Wars, beginning to end, I inevitably fall asleep.
You end up in dream
So
time.
I've seen,
Yes, very good.
I end up in dream time. Or I've walked into a room as everyone's already been watching parts of it. So I've seen parts of Star Wars that have not been in chronological order, which kind of explains how I talk to you in our conversations.
I don't think horror is the right word. I think sort of Milo has this experience talking to me, you know, it depends. I know things he doesn't expect me to know, like Lone Wolf and Cub, which I read, you know, in the manga versions, because when I was obsessing on samurai, I found all of that. But then I don't know other things, right? And he's like, how could you not know this? And that sense of, do you know the story, you not? That's what people are upset about when they say we are losing the culture, right? What they're losing is the sense that people are in the same story, that you've got the character reference, you've got the plot reference, that I can say, okay, you have watched The Hobbit, you do know the Hobbits, yes? Can we do Hobbits? I'm gonna die now when she says no.
That we can do.
On, thank goodness. Right? That it's interesting.
No,
but it's funny because if you know the story, you're suddenly in this whole world of references and associations and allusions that are meaningful. Whereas if you don't know the story, and there is always this problem of, when do you introduce them, right? We have this problem as Christians. It's like, you need to tell the kids the stories as they're growing up so that they will have this sensation of being in the story. So that when you get to the part where, oh yes, they crucify him, and then spend your life meditating on what that part of the story means, and who the they are, and what the situation is, and who he was, and who his mom was, and all of that, that it just, this ricocheting sense of belonging in that narrative. If you don't get it when you're growing up, it's different from if you get it later. And the stories, and we talk about this, the nursery rhymes and the stories that we get when we're children, all of this matters, right? It absolutely critically matters what stories you hear as you're growing up.
Oh yes. Well, this is why people are getting upset with you and other
what do? I tell stories. Don't know what they're talking.
There's the problem. They don't know the references, you know. It's like you're talking about Star Wars and they have no idea what you're talking about, and then they're getting angry with you instead of realizing that they just don't understand the story that you're trying to explain to them. So
this is true.
Instead of admitting, like, I've never actually watched Star Wars 1, 2, and 3 in chronological order, so I know references kind of, but it would be basically the same thing as you trying to explain Christendom, medieval Christianity, Marian devotion, all of those kinds of things, the experience of Christians prior to the iconoclastic Protestantism, especially the Elizabethan era, and what it did to the understanding of Mary and Christ, and all the temple imagery, all of it gone. So it's like us trying to explain Star Wars to people that have never seen it, that kind of heart of the world. And what does that mean? That means we're not the same. We don't have the same culture. We've lost the continuity there. There's like a completely different thing.
Well, but I mean, the irony is, of course, there's never such a thing as continuity. There's the stories you heard when you were growing up. And what's interesting is that most of the time, the stories that people feel like they're like everlasting, and you know, I can go back to right now. I'm on this slide is on the Star Wars 1977 poster, but if we go back to the Spenser Faerie Queene cover, this is from the 19th or early 20th century. I found it on archive.com. I really should get my references better so I can footnote everything so people don't get mad at me about that. There's a whole period between when Spenser publishes his poem and these 19th century illustrated picture versions when nobody's reading it, right? It's archaic, it's overlong. Stories can recapture people's imagination, which is, on the one hand, we're only ever telling the stories that we already heard, and on the other hand, stories do have a sort of recovery. It's like, and it's interesting how they can recovered by artists who are retelling them.
What they say, intersectionality, the intersection. It's like traffic control. It's just still, you know what I mean? It's like you're on the intersection of what? Like, this is a highway?
Yes, no, that's true. Yes, it's a traffic control problem.
This is not like this is not life. You know, no one's living in your car. So it's like they're picking, I know this is weird, but this is how I think. You're picking terms to define how you're trying to say that you're created and formed by your experiences, but then still using all of this commercial linguistic terminology, which essentially puts you back into being economic unit, you know, and reframing this all as like, oh, this makes me who I am because of what? Because I have this kind of label. Not this is the myth that I am in. I am in this one, you know. This is what makes me X. This makes me Greek. Why? Because I'm in this myth.
Well, so
my
I think
people told this
I
story.
mean, that's
so it's just this really odd.
That's why we're having the history wars here about the 1619 project and things like that. It is a mythological problem of saying which story are you going to say is primary. But going back to the commercial, the intersectionality and stuff, it's all branding. Right? I've been thinking about this because in order to launch our Kickstarter, we needed to be able to, like, you know, show it's like Star Wars with dragons. But I mean, in fact, that's an attention getter that then we still have to unpack. A logo, a visual is suddenly, it's like all there all at once. We started last week in our, we have a team of 4 hobbits, right, that are trying to do all of this and start showing it to people a lot, right? And then you get this sense of, oh, I've already seen that, this exercise of I've seen that, oh, what is it? That works best with an icon, which is saying why I think thinking about without iconography we can't have any knowledge. So we designed a logo image to use on our branding, right? And then I started realizing that you need an image in your head to start anchoring the story before you start telling the story.
It starts with image.
Yes.
It has to start with image in the mind before it comes out. Otherwise, there's nothing. It starts with icon.
Go back to the branding thing. It's like I was thinking also about how all of the wars that we're fighting right now, there's sort of magical contagion. You want something to, when someone sees your brand, you want this cascade of ideas to come with it. That branding becomes the way in which we think about everything from the 20th century because of advertising, right? And so the brands that are associated with advertising stories, they always want to be, you know, it's like if you see the Twilight Zone, it's going to be with that soap, right? Everything is like this magical contagion of brands with stories is the bigger context of what we've been fighting, which is this sort of heraldic chivalry association with everything, brand and story. And so everybody doesn't want their brand associated with the wrong story. That explains why, you know, you have the wrong story. You try to associate your brand with a story. Nobody likes that story. Brand explodes. But I was thinking about it because we were trying to create our brand for our story. And let's say, what do we want it associated with? We want it associated with Christianity and dragons and fairy tales. And then I was thinking about keywords and I couldn't figure out what the other ones were, right? But it's because of the power of that logo association, it's iconography. And that's what I was just saying. That's why with the commercial revolution, with the Elizabethans, when you destroy all the icons, you destroy people's ability to anchor themselves in the story. I think that's where I was going. Iconography is in fact a destruction of the ability to think at all. Iconoclasm. I can't do it. Iconoclasm destroys your ability to think. That's how powerful it is. And that's why brands are attacked, icons are attacked. There's this attack on and it's visceral is the wrong adjective for it. I mean, your entire being can be wrapped up in your ability to recognize that image. The thing is, going back to the sort of when your identity is made commercially, you're nothing but brands, and advertising is, of course. The identity politics stuff it's a straight up artifact of marketing because you are trained to think I can only, you know, the branding, they say we want people to associate themselves with the story. So we've been saying this before. It's like you want to find yourself in the story. That's the power of stories. Advertising is all little stories. Dorothy Sayers has this great take on it in Murder Must Advertise, where the advertisers are creating all these kind of archetypal characters like the prudent housewife and the energetic businessman and such. And all ads are tiny stories that you're meant to find yourself inside. Of course, since they have only a brief amount of time because of the way we set up advertising, although infomercials maybe are longer, right? This is an infomercial for our Kickstarter, that you have to do it in these very caricature forms. And so, you know, if I want to get you to think you're inside this story, I need to get something that I think looks like a mirror, what you think you're going to look like. And it's that mirroring effect. And of course, when people don't want to drink Bud Light anymore because they don't see themselves in the character that is now associated with Bud Light, for example, right? It all shatters because, you know, they're sort of forcing an identification and a participation in a story that people don't want to participate in. But, you know, advertising completely depends on it. And what's ironic about all of this is this advertising world exists powerfully in a context in which you don't have sacred advertising. You don't have icons anymore. You don't have story that you can find yourself in as the mythology that gives your life meaning, because you're actually participating in that sacred transcendent reality.
Yeah, there's no sacred cultus.
The origin, it's like, as we said, with the economic and artistic, all of these twinnings, these broken twins are present here. And one is sci-fi and fantasy. They're not different. They're actually the same story.
Mystic tech.
Yep. Mystic tech.
Mystic tech. Yep. Prayer and work being united suddenly. It's very cool.
It's very cool.
It's very cool. Quite cool. Well, I'm wondering now, okay? So we have this explosion of dress-ups, people wanting to enter into Star Wars, which is based on the Faerie Queene. What has the culture done in re-entering Edmund Spenser's Faerie Queene in a sci-fi aesthetic? You know, this is a kind of reboot of Protestant civilization somehow, isn't it? Upgraded, and I'm wondering how that has affected everybody in the sense of the power versus prototype that everyone has been referring to, the Force, for so many years. Forces are impersonal and they can be wielded. So, like, I know enough about Star Wars to know that's like,
see, even you know it when you can't stay awake in the movies.
Exactly. Well, it's like, oh, how hard I've tried to stay away from all of this stuff, and even then you can't. You get it's sort of flung at you. This impersonal force versus personal logos, incarnate logos. You know, so it's like the whole culture's been like rehitched to this Spenserian horse, which was iconoclastic and wanted to split the monastic. Now that is a very interesting phenomenon.
Well, it's particularly interesting. The Jedi are a kind of monastic order. They're sort of fighting monks, right? That they have to. I do know this much about the later lore, right? That they develop, that they're. I mean, some of them are sort of oblates, like, right? They're trained from birth, as it were, and they have spiritual discipline. I did like this I think it's in The Empire Strikes Back. I mean, when Luke does his proper training, it's very mystical, and I'm clearly in it for the monks. Yeah, there's no the Force is not incarnate. We have a lot of work cut out for us, and we know where we're going. We have a plot, we have an arc, we have characters. It's happening, and the symbolism is just like shatteringly showing itself to us constantly. You have no idea how much fun this is to write, but we really hope you enjoy reading it, because it's the story that we're all in, and we are trying to share with you the joy that we have of that story, but also the horror of what it's been like in the particular manifestation of it, which is what Kilts was showing, and thinking about how we started this in the midst of the lockdowns and the mandates and the COVID and the virus and the horror and the terror of the dragon that was capturing the whole world with that particular narrative.
Where the attention flows, the power goes.
That's a really good catchphrase. Maybe we can use that in our marketing. Okay, we've had Casey and Mel participate. Draco Alchemicus says the deconstructed Faerie Queene, says Casey. Yes. Satan would love to actually disincarnate Christ. I think she was thinking about there with the Zelensky icon.
The Zelensky thing.
Tells all that is needed to know about anyone who would do that to an icon. Indeed. Yeah. The force of materialism, even its greatest trick, is telekinesis, manipulating material matter. We always manipulate matter. I do it right now. Look, I'm waving my hand. However I did that, right? You do it when you speak, because sound waves need matter to bounce. They go clack, 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 clack. It's not like light, which doesn't need a physical thing. You're manipulating matter with your voice box all the time.
It's very trippy.
We do the trippy here. The Draco Alchemicus. Drink the spice. Yes.